As a music attorney of over 9 years, all I do is deal with licensing and sales and copyrights and registrations and all the things. And so I think that if you are looking to ever license music as a business, right? So you might be like a fitness center, you might be a restaurant. And so you're just trying to get an overview of kind of how this works and how to protect yourself. I got you covered. But also, if you're a musician and you just want to license some music, I got you covered. So, what you need to know, we're going to start with just kind of the basics here. You need to understand that with any song, there's two sides of it. So, and there's actually like multiple copyrights. But to keep this simple, we always kind of break the song into two sections. On one side, we have the composition, which is the written song, right? So if I sit here and I come up with some cool chords and a melody and some words, and I could just sing you the song, right? That's my song. And that's called the composition. When I take that composition, I'm like, hey, Mr. Producer, I have this great song. Let's record it. So we go to Mr. Producer's studio and we record it. So the recorded version is called the master. So when you're licensing music, depending on what you're doing, you have to license one or both. So, for example, if we are licensing just the song, it's usually because we're doing a cover song, right? So we're making a new song. So we're not even using the recorded thing. We're making a new version of this. So all we need to do is get a license for this. And then if we're going to use any portion, let's say, of the recorded master, then that's called sampling. And so now we need to get a license to sample just the thing from the recorded version. So that's just the basic of, music licensing when we talk about it. Now, what we have to do is then determine what's the intended use. So let me kind of break this down into the general categories. So first might just be like a personal use, right? You're getting married, right? Great. Congrats. Get a prenup. So if you're getting, married or you have a party or something that is personal, you are allowed to use the music that you own or otherwise have access to, and you don't have to go and get any licenses. That's great. So you're good to go there. But if you now are doing things like you're a business, you're a restaurant, right? You own a fitness studio, a bar. You are using music now for commercial purposes, right? So you actually do have to get licenses for this. Now, besides like commercial uses, you might also be using music in TV and film, right? So if you were like a tequila company and you want a song in your commercial, this again is a commercial purpose, but we do a lot of synchronization licensing, which is syncing the song to a visual, and that's for TV, film, games. So that would be a synchronization use. But then also there's public performance. So public performance would be something where you now need to go and you can get a license for that through performance rights organizations like BMI, ASCAP, and that's if you're located in the United States. So that's just a very broad overview. There's lots of types of licenses that you can get. There's one, group of the personal uses I talked about, which you're good to go. Use the music however you need, but the rest of it you're actually getting a license for, and you're gonna probably have to pay some money too. So then the third kind of category that I'll go through as far as just understanding licensing in general is that you need to explore what those licensing options are. Now, this is where it gets really helpful if you have an entertainment attorney or a music attorney who can kind of guide you through this on just how to negotiate. I had a client kind of come to me and we're dealing with thousands of licenses that are needed right now because it was kind of like an oopsie thing and the songs were already used in a thing and now we need to like retroactively go back and try to get the licenses, which is not ideal. We want to get the licenses for whatever you're planning on using the music for first, because once you do it already, then you don't really have any negotiation power. You already used it. So anyway, you're watching this video, so obviously you've done some degree of research and you are doing your due diligence, which is great. So you can do obviously direct licensing. You go to the owner of the music and you can definitely get some help with this, but you go directly to the owner of the music. Hey, I'd love to license your song. Here's $300. I'm going to use this for, a quick 30-second background music in my YouTube video. You write up a simple contract, write a license agreement, you're good to go. But you can also get music obviously through, music libraries and royalty-free music platforms, and you can find so many just by doing a Google search. And so what these companies essentially do is they are set up so that you sign up to have a subscription, and then you can download all the different songs that are on their platform. And so you essentially have a license to use the song through the company. There's also royalty-free platforms, so if you go to not only like Epidemic Music, Audio Jungle, Premium Beat, all kinds of, licensing opportunities. But when we say royalty-free, we're talking about music that might even be in the public domain. So, if you're like, oh man, that for Elise, oh, I love me some Beethoven or Mozart, and you're talking about music that is really, really old, it's what's called in the public domain. And, Copyright Act didn't come into play until so long ago. And so the stuff that's super, super, super old is in the public domain. You don't have to get any kind of license to use it. So again, this is why it's helpful to have someone to kind of walk you through the process, because you may not even need to get a license, but in most instances, you will. So then what you need to understand is you're like, all right, great. Got you the license. Well, you need to understand what the license agreement is. And so there are things that have to be really clearly defined if you are the person licensing it. Obviously, there's two sides of it. And so the person who's giving the license wants to make sure they get as much money as possible and that they keep the contract really short. So you have to come and renew again. So for example, we might get a license for a documentary because, the filmmaker is just pitching the documentary to try to get awards, right, at these festivals. And so you might get a license just for that, right? And then the licensor will come back and be like, but if you decide to actually release the film, you got to get another license. So anyway, on your side, if you are the one actually paying the money, you want to try to negotiate the lowest amount possible and also the longest usage. In the best case scenario, you want the word perpetuity, means forever and ever and ever. So, you go, I'm using your song in my feature film. It's a perpetual license. I'm paying you one time and I never want to hear from you again. Yeah, so those are the kinds of things that are going to be helpful in your licensing agreement. So duration, essentially. But also things like territory, right? So where can you use it? Obviously, you want to say not just the world, but I actually say the universe and the metaverse. Also, two words you should have in your licensing agreement. And then, anytime you can just pay a one time fee, that's great. We don't want renewals. We don't want ongoing royalty obligations. So these are things that if you can negotiate it, you will thank yourself later as you are going through the actual process. And then what happens next? Well, you need to make sure that you keep records of everything. Okay, so you need to keep records of emails and communications and negotiations. And if you're on the phone with Paul and Paul's all like, cool, Krystle, we're going to do this license and we're going to pay, it only needs to be $500, yada, yada, yada. Well, if you have a phone call and you have a verbal agreement with someone, that's great. What is greater is having an actual written agreement. And what you can do to document everything as you go is like write an email. Hey, Paul, great talking to you. So we said bullet point $500 in perpetuity in the universe and metaverse because you're fancy and you're going to use all those words. And then obviously, once you sign it, review it, use it, comply with it. If you, licensed it for just the festival to try to promote your documentary, don't go and use it in the trailer of your feature film because that's a different use. Don't go use it in the feature film for distribution. That's a different use. So that's the full overview of licensing and how you kind of go through it. Now, the deeper dives on how to actually get mechanical licenses for doing cover songs, if you need to get a public performance license through a PRO, which would be in the United States, ASCAP, BMI, I have videos covering all those topics on the channel. So, of course, be sure to subscribe, turn on those bell notifications. We release new videos every week helping you with your career and business.